Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to talk to you guys about types and about type balancing. And if you're not familiar, types are combat, blast, speed, and universal in Marvel Future Fight. And despite having the rock, paper, scissors, neutral advantages that they confer to different characters just based on what they are by this chart here, the types will also determine certain aspects of a character. Most importantly, the stat distributions. Now I'll get to the stat distributions in a second, but there's also a more important overarching theme of each type that I want to get into, and I want to kind of highlight why there's one particular type that has suffered for a long time and continues to suffer, and I feel like Netmarble should really change something about it and balance the types a little bit, because there is one type that is lagging far behind the other three. Now, as far as stat distributions go, every character has stats that they get because of their type, and the stats that I'm talking about are physical attack, energy attack, physical defense, energy defense, HP, stuff like that. Those flat stats, not the percentages, but the flat stats. And depending on whether you're speed, combat, universal, or blast, those stats will vary. And a perfect example of this is Red Skull. When Red Skull has his uniform on that transforms him into a speed character, his stats for my example are as follows. 10,922 physical attack, 6,411 physical defense, 5,356 energy defense, and 15,897 HP. Now, I know that when I take off his uniform, his skills or his stats, sorry, are going to go down because there's a 10% bonus conferred by the uniform, but you can also see that some of the stats, despite the fact that they aren't being buffed anymore, are actually higher than his stat list or his uniform list stats. So look at his energy attack, for example, 64-54. If I switch, it's actually higher now. It's 65-35. Likewise, his energy defense doesn't actually go down by much. His HP actually goes up. It goes from 15,897 to 16,304. Now, HP is not affected by uniforms, but still, to have a difference of about 400 in your HP just based on the type is not a meaningless stat. That's actually a pretty strong number. Another example that we can look at is Groot. Groot as a universal, we can see here if we go to the uniform list, my Groot universal has 25,680 HP with his uniform on. Without it, he actually drops. So his universal form actually has more HP than his combat-based form. Another example is Vision, who changes from blast to universal. So in Vision's example, without his uniform, which is what I have him with currently, he has 10,399 energy attack. When I switch over to his uniform, his energy attack actually goes down. So if we equip it here and we go back out of the screen, we can see that his energy attack has dropped 300 points, and that's not a small number. That's a reasonable chunk. You can see there that his HP actually goes up despite the fact that you don't get any HP bonuses from your uniform. So universal character, the universal Vision, has more than 1,000 HP more than non-uniformed Vision. So it's very clear that the different types have different stat allocations. That's not a problem. What is the problem is that there's a certain class that has the worst stat distributions overall, and that is speed characters. They don't have as much physical or energy attack as blast characters. They don't have as much defense as combat characters, and they don't have as much HP as universal characters. So what exactly do they have that makes them advantageous in any way? What compensates for that? They have a higher dodge stat natively. That's terrible. So that's the first thing that I want to bring up, and that's the first thing that I think Netmarble needs to look into, because despite the fact that we have so many good speed characters, Elsa, Gwenpool, Spider-Gwen, Black Widow, Silk, we have so many iconic ones, Daredevil, they're really not that good overall, and there are no standout speed characters in the game yet. There are some good ones, there are some pretty good ones, but there are no, best in slot speed characters. There's always a debate like which speed characters are the best, and it's really a toss-up because none of them are very good. You know, Doctor Strange obviously takes the cake for blast characters. There are a few arguments over whether you want, you know, Moon Knight or Carnage for the best combat character. Universal has a lot of competition, but Speed is literally a race for the bottom. There's really not a lot of selection here, and there's not a lot of diversity between the characters, and there is no one standout. So I do think that Speed characters need to have some kind of rework. They need to be looked at a little bit, because I feel as though they're lagging behind, not only in stats, but in other areas. They're lagging behind the other three types. The second thing I wanted to bring up about Speed characters is the leadership problem, and the problem of bad leaderships. So taking a look at the leaderships, if we start with combat, and if we count characters that have offensive leaderships, including both physical attack, all attack, and crit damage or crit rate bonuses, or specific elemental bonuses, there are 13 characters that confer those kinds of offensive bonuses, which are generally regarded as the best leaderships. As well, a lot of other combat characters have HP leaderships, and HP leaderships are actually not that bad, especially for newer players, and in some PvP circumstances they are really helpful. As well, some have all defense bonuses, which are really not the worst thing in the world. So combat characters have a healthy amount of strong leaderships. Moving over into Blast, we have 9 characters who offer offensive-minded leaderships. As well, we have lots of characters who have unique and situationally useful defensive leaderships, like Red Skull with the defense, Sister Grimm with the energy bubble, Sharon Rogers with the energy shield. You have Baron Mordo's dodge. You have physical defense from Caecilius. You have super armor when switching with Vision. So you have a lot of different options, and there's some variety here. You move over into Universal, and this is just a clusterfuck of very strong and some of the strongest leaderships in the game. Out of 23 Universal characters, 12 of them have offensive-minded leaderships, which is insane. Not to mention the fact that Ronan and Thanos have the highest and the strongest leaderships of any characters in the game, and they're both Universals. Odin's leadership is super useful in the meta, and even stuff like Destroyer has a useful one. Almost every single character in the Universal list has a strong leadership, maybe except for, you know, Loki, Thor, and Ghost Rider, but even those can be useful in certain circumstances. And then we come to our lowly, redheaded bastard stepchild, Speed. This is just awful. There are so many bad leaderships, it almost pains me to go through this list one by one. But we'll be generous and we'll check out which characters even have a remote possibility of offering an offensive-minded leadership. Silk does. Sadly, it's really small, but she does. Fandral does not. That's a terrible leadership. Black Widow does not. That's a terrible leadership. Black Cat does not. Another terrible leadership. That's 3 straight. Wow, 6% dodge. Riveting stuff. Bleed? No. Attack speed. Worse. Something when tagging? When dodging. Wow, that's useful. That's so meta right now. Poison resist. Crit damage. There, we have our first legitimate one, but we'll count Silk. We have 2 right now. Basically 1.5. Wow, another 6% dodge. Oh, look, another 6% dodge. Finally, we're only like 15 characters deep, but we have 1 offensive-minded leadership. Skill cooldown. Here's another one. There we go. Crit rate. That's not bad, but it pales in comparison to the reworked Black Panther one, which doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. Here's another useless leadership. Here's another good one that makes 4 in total. 2 if you're only counting the pure offensive ones, but we're going to be generous with speed types and we'll say 4. Let's check out what Miles Morales has. Oh, that's terrible. Spider-Gwen, also terrible. Sin, another good one. That's 3 good ones, 5 total. Terrible. Terrible. Only good for Loki and her, I guess. Not so good, but good for Shadowlands, but again, situationally good. So as you can see, we legitimately have 3 offensive leaderships for speed characters. If you count all of the generous ones in, Misty Knight, Yondu, and Silk and Hawkeye, we're up to 7. But that's nothing. 7 out of 24 is horrible compared to 13, compared to 11, compared to, So clearly speed characters are hurting, and especially what pains me the most about speed characters is this 6% dodge. This is one of the worst, if not the worst leadership in the game. Why is this still 6%? Even if it was double, even if it was triple, even 18% dodge is basically useless. They seriously need to take a look at this, because it's crippling speed characters, and it makes them so undervalued, and they're undervalued because it's just not worth investing into them. And it's evident, it's really truly evident in the fact that Speed Extreme Alliance Battle Day is still the most difficult day to get a high score on, even for the whales, even for the people who have theory crafted and tested and meted the whole weekly schedule. Speed Day is still the hardest day of them all, and that speaks to the lack, the dearth, the absolute absence of strong speed characters. We thought we had something great with Elsa Tier 2. We were fooling ourselves. We have nothing. Speed characters are seriously hurting in the game. Their leaderships are terrible. More than half of these leaderships are essentially useless. It's basically like the character has no leadership. On top of that, they have the lowest and the weakest and the most useless stat distributions of any type, and they're severely undercut by the 3 other ones when it comes to anything. And any one of these classes that has a type switching uniform, except for Green Goblin, would stand to benefit from that were it to happen. So that really, to me, reflects just how bad and just how much of a terrible spot speed characters are as a way of, in comparison to other types. And I wanted to bring this up because it does bug me, and I do think that speed characters need a bit of tweaking. I think the type as a whole needs a little bit of a revamp. I think the old leadership of dodge just doesn't cut it anymore in the meta. It doesn't cut it anymore in the way that the game has gone. I mean, the dodge leaderships were interesting once upon a time before guaranteed dodge was a thing. We haven't had that many speed characters since the change and the shift to guaranteed dodge. So I think that Netmarble should go back and relook and look again and change perhaps some of these severely anemic speed leaderships, and probably look at bumping up their native stat distributions as well to bring them more in line with what we expect from Blast, Combat, and Universal characters. So let me know what you guys think about this topic. Let me know how you think speed characters stand in the game, if you think that they're good right where they are or they need more help like I've suggested. If you have some ideas for some good speed leaderships, I'm really excited to hear from you what they are, because just giving them the cookie cutter energy damage, physical damage, etc. is good, but we could probably do a little bit better than that. So let me know in the comment section, guys. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.